Well, if you're just joining us, it's AM 120 here on BCOS television. Now, as Nigerians, we're familiar with statements concerning insecurity, especially since, of course, the insurgency started in Borno State, northern part of the North Nigeria. And, of course, we began having clashes with herdsmen. You talk about the situation in Kaduna, talk about the Kajuru killings and all that. These are indications of the fact that everything isn't well where security is concerned. Well, in recent time, we've had the federal government, the president himself, actually lash out at the security chiefs, saying your good is not good enough. You need to do more. Well, one wonders if actually the president's just getting the briefing, the correct briefing from the chiefs, or basically found a way to get at what has actually happened right there in Borno State and every other place in Nigeria where security is a concern. Well, we can say that security is a concern, insecurity rather, is a concern everywhere in Nigeria. Well, today we'll focus on all this as we look at heightened insecurity in Nigeria with our first guest, Rafiu Lawal, a security scholar. Good morning and thank you for joining us on AM 120.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, good morning. Thank you to you. Now, between the first and second week of June, 6th and 13th to be precise, there were 240 lives that were critical to have been lost in heightened insecurity just in the northern part of Nigeria. And that is even in spite of the COVID-19 that has taken the whole space. What are your perceptions?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that the level of insecurity in Nigeria is now attaining a formidable dimension. By that I mean that we are now experiencing an unprecedented level of insecurity in Nigeria. From the northeast with the activities of Boko Haram, to the northwest where you have banditry, and down to the south where you have kidnappings and other issues of domestic violence gaining currency. One must be worried with these recent happenings. And for me, as a student of security studies, I think that analyzing the security situation in Nigeria, especially Boko Haram since almost 2010, is something that is embarrassing because we've not had any headway. Of course, it has also damaged, or it's damaging, if you like, the image of Nigeria among the Committee of Nations. But my concern, particularly as a student of security studies again, is that the insecurity in Nigeria has huge impact for the peace and stability in the ECOWAS region. Because I look at all the countries that constitute the ECOWAS, and I don't see any one of them having that capacity.
Before we go to the West Coast,
I'm just looking at my own personal concern now.
Yeah.
The implication of Nigeria's
insecurity. We'll get to that. All right. Now, let's look at the component parts of the insecurity. Northwest Boko Haram, northeast Boko Haram, northwest banditry, south and southwest kidnapping, IPOB. Now, let's take a look at the banditry component. Let's take a look at that.
Well, we have said it, countless times that when you talk about security, you need to approach security not basically from the physical security or national security aspect of it. When you talk about security, you also have to look at the human security aspect of it. Security basically is, development. And when you look at what is happening in the northwest, for example, where you have banditry gaining currency, you discover that, there are so many, push factors that would, force an average Nigerian into, criminality. The level of poverty. Recently, last year, the United Nations came up with a report describing the kind of poverty in Nigeria. And they describe it as a multi-dimensional poverty.
Are you saying that the insecurity, banditry situation we have is actually a factor of economic situations?
Of course, it's part of it.
How then do you respond to people who say that the bandits are actually Boko Haram fighters who just found their way down to the northwest?
Even if you take your time to interrogate, some of the causes of Boko Haram conflict itself, it's also tied, it has economic influence.
Can we tie it to economic influence?
It has.
Okay, when you have people who just behead other people and talk about Allah Akbar, I'm apologies to Muslims, Muslim viewers, but that's the practice. They actually make it look like they are being spiritual or religious in that particular act. But when we also look at it, it seems like there is no particular thing we can point to say, look, this is the real cause of the insurgency.
No, I don't belong to that school of thought. And I've said it, countless times that, one of the things that is prompting the security challenges that we have in Nigeria is the perception of government to assume that, grievances that people have both in the north and the southern part of Nigeria are not valid.
Maybe you should shed light on the economic component.
Okay. What I mean by that is
insurgency now.
When you look at the genesis of Boko Haram, how it started, majority of those who constitute foot soldiers for Boko Haram are people who graduated from school, who couldn't get jobs. We had cases of people, after presenting their certificate at various places, could not secure a job, had to tear their certificate apart. We have people at the moment that Boko Haram is the one providing some kind of micro grant and loans for. And that's why these people, have push their entire commitments to the struggle and the agitations of Boko Haram.
When you go to university school and you graduate and you tear your certificate, that's extremism. A form of extremism.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Well,
we're dealing with extremists.
You also cannot tie it away with, there's something we call frustration and aggression theory. These people are frustrated. Somebody graduating from school after spending 5 years not having a place to put whatever knowledge and skills he has had into practice to make something for himself or herself. It's something that everyone should be ashamed of. As governments, as individuals, look at the local government authorities in the north and in the southern part of Nigeria. It has collapsed. Service delivery is poor. Thank God for those of us in the south. When you go to the north, there's almost nothing like local government authorities.
Mr. Lawal, when one listens to you and looks at the reality on ground, it's hard to just agree that economic reasons are the only, basically the root cause of the insecurity situation we have in the country. Now, if, for example, you've been to school, you're out, and you can't find a job, and basically you turn to Boko Haram, okay? One would expect that your focus would be, maybe probably robbing people of their means of livelihood or food or whatever to survive. But when you go killing and bombing people up, blowing them up, how is that supposed to be satisfied on economic agenda?
Number one, I need to establish the fact that when you look at, the causes of the triggers of Boko Haram, for example, for those of us who are, students of security studies, we talk about the push factors, we talk about the pull factors, we talked about the contextual factors. So the economic aspect of it falls under the push factor. There are other factors. Religious mesmerization, religious, misinterpretations. The contextual factor is there. The weak state institutions, fragility of the state. Those are, factors. So it's not a monopolistic approach. But back to your, the economic aspect that we're discussing. They say that he who pays the piper dictates the tone. If Boko Haram members are the one providing your means of, livelihood, you want to, show some kind of commitment, some kind of loyalty. These people get grants from Boko Haram members. They get loans from them, micro loans, and these are established facts.
The fighters or their families?
Both of them, both the fighters and their families.
What will a fighter use a grant for when you're in the battlefield living in Sambisa forest?
He has families to take care of. And being a member, he has access to so many things. He has access to, women, he has access to drinks, he has access to drugs, almost everything.
Why would you say it's been so difficult for the Nigerian military to vanquish these insurgents?
Well, from my experience in the past, monitoring the situation, there are so many reasons responsible for, the current situation that we find ourselves. Number one, you have to also look at the issue of, number one, politicization of security initiatives and actions. By that, I mean that many of the security initiatives and actions that we have seen in recent times, many of them have been politicized. You recall that immediately the president came into power in 2011. Was it 11 or 2015? The first time he came into power.
2015.
One of the declarations that he made at his inauguration was that, the Chief of Army Staff should relocate immediately to the Northeast.
Did that help?
It did not happen. That is what I'm saying.
It did not happen.
It was just a political statement.
Remember,
the Chief of Army Staff only relocated early this year, since 2015.
We had reports and footages of Buratai serving food to the army, to the soldiers right there on ground recently.
Visiting soldiers on ground is not the same thing as relocating.
It wasn't just visiting. It was said that he was actually present.
He himself said it early this year when he relocated fully.
He relocated fully. So basically,
since 2015.
Do you think that helped us?
Right
or
now,
helped the war?
Right now, it affected the war
positively.
No.
Not positively.
For going there now,
his presence.
His presence now is affecting positively because it has some kind of way of boosting the morals of soldiers when they know that the number one commander is also with them, experiencing the same challenges that they are also facing. They know that they are good to go.
But some people see is being there as the clog in the wheel of progress, because they can actually consider the very fact that there will be the burden to actually, protect him. That's one. And besides that, they feel if he is there and he's not actually leading, it may kind of be a way that would make the commanders, even in the theater of war, to actually become reticent. So, but while he's there, will he also be able to give command? So,
of course, it's possible. I don't expect him to, participate physically, but his experience alone, his influence alone, brings so many things to the table.
Couldn't he give the same from where he was?
It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. His
presence at the theater of war.
Yes, it's boosts the morale. It does so many things to the boys on the field. It does so many things. So, but apart from the politicization of security initiatives that we've had, we've also had the issue of corruption, which we have to deal with if we are to.
Corruption where?
Corruption within the military and in the society.
How does that affect military operations?
Well, you recall that about 3 weeks ago, if I'm correct, a major general of the Nigerian military was court-martialed, and he was found guilty of, mismanaging over 400 million naira that was meant for the operational welfare of soldiers. Just imagine if monies that was meant to take care of soldiers, were being, monopolized and diverted by top echelon of the military. It goes a long way in affecting them. There was a time the incumbent governor of Borno State, Professor Zulum, was accusing the Nigerian military of taking bribes at the border between Damaturu and Borno. Nigerian military were supposed to be, ascertaining the identities of people coming into Borno State and leaving. We're just, taking bribe at the border and not doing what is expected of them. It's everywhere. This goes a long way to affect, whatever security effort that is being put in place,
Okay, now, looking at all these reasons you've given for why the war on insurgency seems to get protracted, would you also say that one of the reasons could be the human shield situation in which Boko Haram uses people in that particular area to actually shield themselves? So it puts the soldiers in a precarious situation, where they don't even know what to do, since it's difficult to identify or differentiate between the people and the insurgents.
You see, I really don't think that has any impact, so to say.
Really?
And
you can't just go in and blow up people.
No. This is what we're dealing with is a warfare. The soldiers are aware. It's not a domestic security. It's a warfare. So I don't expect them to treat Boko Haram the same way they are treating protesters on the streets. They know, even those of us who are not soldiers, we know some of the tactics and strategies of terrorist organizations. So how much more soldiers? They know how terrorists operate, so they should expect some of these things.
But the operational tactics of insurgents is such that regular warfare doesn't deal with it. Now, they will come in the middle of the night. And we heard the Chief of Army Staff complain that intelligence is a major challenge to the army.
Yeah.
And the army has the whole of an NAIC, intelligence corps, a whole corps. So how does that tally?
We need to tell ourselves the truth. The government is failing in its responsibility to protect the lives and properties of citizens. And Nigeria is gradually returning to what Thomas Hobbes described as the state of nature. A lawless society. I wouldn't know how soldiers would, want to give excuse for not having enough intelligence to deal with these things. So where's the place of civil military?
The chief of army staff said it.
I know. So where's the place of civil military? Where's the place of civil military relationship? It's part of their work to build the hearts and minds of the people.
A lawless society, isn't that extreme?
No. You see, when you're dealing with a situation like this, there are people you call, entry points. The community, the stakeholders, the gatekeepers. You approach them, the traditional rulers, the groups in the society, you approach them.
Who's supposed to do that?
The security should do that.
Are you sure the people
do that?
are willing to talk to them?
To do that?
Of course they are. They are professionals in the army. They are not just soldiers. They are professionals. They are medical doctors. They are intelligent officers.
All right. Provided, let's say that they actually reach out to the people in the community. Do you actually think the people would be willing to talk to them? I say this because you've had situations in the past where information is brought to the military by the people in a particular locality.
Yeah.
And then you have reprisals.
Yeah.
And Boko Haram comes back and then vents their anger on those people and they're left defenseless. So people in that kind of situation, do you see them coming out to inform the military of things on ground or giving them information that could lead to the capture or even the vanquishing of Boko Haram?
You see, that's why it's important that community members in those places that are affected need to understand the essence of this, countering terrorism struggle. The whole essence is to ensure their security. The whole essence is to ensure that they can make something with their lives. They can return back to their normal lives. With what is happening at the moment, they cannot do that under, the governance of Boko Haram guys. So that's why the question of winning the hearts and minds is very important. If, community members are providing information for you, should also have a mechanism to ensuring that whosoever is providing information is also safe.
How will the military do that?
There are various ways.
Okay.
For example, ensure that the information does not go out. We've had cases, in recent times where military officers were ambushed and somebody within their ranks provided information for the terrorist group. So the question of discipline, even among the military, is something that is very important that we need to be strict about.
Why are the military guys leaking information to terrorists?
Well, you also cannot write off the whole idea about, how do I put it now? People making, some kind of gains or profit from this whole terrorism
because
fight.
The chief of army staff actually said that there isn't enough commitment from the troops.
I don't think that is true. I don't think that is true. These people sacrifice a lot.
That is what the chief of army said.
Of course, he might say so.
Okay.
He might say so, but
please, sorry for quoting in this way. We have a commercial break right now. We'll be right back.
Whoever tells me the tips on how to stay safe gets another round of smoothies.
Okay, we will all see it. Wash your hands with soap for 20 seconds.
Puff into a tissue and dispose it properly. Dab like this when you sneeze.
Clean the house regularly. Clean surfaces you touch regularly, like door handles and taps.
Eat healthy. Exercise more.
Tightly cover nose and mouth with face mask when you go out of the house. Practice social distancing when in public.
Well done.
Honey, where's the smoothie? Stay safe. Stay healthy. 3 Crowns Milk. Healthy moms. Happy families.
It's good to know you're still there. It's still AM 120 here on BCOS television, and we're looking at the heightened insecurity in Nigeria with our first guest, Mr. Rafiu Lawal. He is a security scholar. Okay, please proceed with your comment.
So we're talking about the fact that, whether the boys are not committed enough or not. They are. The boys are committed. They are ready to go. If you provide the needed equipment for them, if you provide, the needed support for them, they are ready to go. So the fact that they are not achieving results means that the leadership of the military needs to check itself.
The leadership of the military, before we get to them, would you say that we actually budget enough for the prosecution of security initiatives or even policies in the country?
Well, I'm a peace practitioner, and I've always advocated privately and publicly that we don't need, military empowerment to achieve peace. We need to, begin to refocus our funding to developmental projects. But be that as it may, I think that Nigerian military is funded at least relatively well if the monies that are appropriated to them or allocated to them are used judiciously. We've had cases of, we talked about corruption, for example. Many of the top echelons are the ones, embezzling this money. You know, why is President Muhammadu Buhari still keeping Dasuki up till now? It was because monies meant to purchase, military arsenals were diverted for political purposes.
Even with the elements of corruption at play, some people will still say that what we're budgeting for, for security is actually quite low. Because when you consider the very fact that 70% of the amount budgeted goes to paying salaries and taking care of
other costs
of the military, personnel. So, and you have 50% left. Just how many ammunitions can you purchase? How many war equipment can you get with that?
The reason why we need those things, the reason why we need to empower our military the way we're empowering them now, is because we have failed in our responsibility to also invest in human security. There are some countries in the world now without established military personnel. There are some countries.
Granted.
Tiny countries.
Well, if you say
tiny.
It's not about population. Japan is one of the most peaceful countries in the world. Japan population is about 100 million.
But then,
as you know, Japan is arming up.
But what I'm saying, it's one of the most peaceful countries in the world.
But you know, Japan is arming up now.
Of course, I know.
Now, but let's agree with you on that particular point. But you still realize that, okay, we can't just, with the current situation we have, we can't just say, let's go back and begin to spend money on development projects so that people come out of poverty while we have insurgency. Before you can do that, you need to hand this problem first.
Yeah.
So really, we can't talk about developmental projects until we can bring things back to normalcy.
Yeah, you see, the fight against insurgency comes in two ways. We talk about the soft approach, we talk about the hard approach. Some talk about the carrot and stick approach. As you're confronting, terrorists militarily, you also must invest in developmental projects. Because one of the things that you can use in breaking their ranks, for example, now government is investing so much in reintegration and disengagement. If you are, talking to people to drop down their arms, leave the terrorist camp and join, that of the society, that of the government, you must convince them that there is something available for them. You cannot tell these guys to leave Boko Haram camp and come back and remain jobless. You cannot tell them to leave Boko Haram camp, and come back and do not have access to health, do not have access to food. It must be done simultaneously. So you cannot wait for insurgency to end before you begin to invest in developmental projects. You know, that's why when people talk about granting amnesty to Boko Haram, giving them education, giving them vocational training, many people say they are against it. I really don't know why. Because those things have their own implication of breaking the ranks of these guys.
You know, sometimes it's hard when you look at people who you see someone who killed your father, killed your mother, raped your sisters, and then they're back in society, the same society, they're ravaged. So, you can understand the anger or the feelings of the people.
Yeah,
who actually
that's why you have to invest in confidence building. Rwanda is a good example. We have the Gachacha system. African traditional mechanism for resolving conflict. Those who committed the crime came up publicly, asked for forgiveness, show some kind of remorse, and now they are intermarrying in Rwanda, the Tutsi and the Hutsis.
Obasanjo tried that when he came in 1999. Did you get any result?
Well, I am not sure he did it the way it should.
But he tried?
Well, maybe. Which of the groups now?
He something like the Truth Commission of South Africa. He did that in 1999 when he came in.
Well, I can't recall now.
He did that. But now, let's examine the strategies that the armed forces is adopting in tackling Boko Haram, insurgency, kidnapping, and the North Central, they had many issues. Now, is the strategy in the Northwest working?
Well, I'm aware that recently the Nigerian military launched what is called Operation Accord, and which was part of, mobilizing the various armed forces to support the fight against banditry. But I think they launched it about 3-4 weeks ago. So 3-4 weeks or some months ago. So one cannot really begin to assess, the level of improvement that we've had. But with what we continue to hear and see from pages of newspaper and hear from our friends over there, it's like whatever strategy that has been put in place, it's not working at all. We see, video footages of people being killed on a daily basis. Even the governor of Katsina, Masari, came to say that he has failed in his responsibility to protect, his people. We saw the protests that happened recently in Katsina, led by, youth in that area who were fed up with the level of insecurity in the land. And Katsina is the home state of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If that is happening in Katsina, so let's begin to assume, how other places would be.
You are a security scholar. Give us a national framework. Northeast, Northwest, North Central, South, South, Southwest, Southeast. You know the hotspots. You're a security scholar. Give us a national framework and the signposts for resolution.
Well, I think that there is no one-fit-all approach to resolving this crisis. Number one, we need to address, the issue of corruption in the military and in the society, because those who are military officers are also citizens of Nigeria. They read newspapers, they see what is happening. They see how much an average politician earns. They see how much politicians are embezzling. So we need to address the issue of corruption both in the society. That will also reflect in the military. Then, like I said earlier, when you talk about security, one of the topmost...
That's long term.
Of course.
What about the short?
Short term, I think that we need to see how to ensure that our military are encouraged. We need to be sure that they are empowered to take this fight headlong. We need to also see how we can empower our local governments. Local governments, almost all across Nigeria, they are collapsing. And local government are the closest government to the people. Service delivery is key in the fight against Boko Haram. Collaboration is also important. All stakeholders, both the military, civil society organizations, private sector, regional institutions, must come together to support this fight. If not, we're going to have something that is, totally out of control. Earlier, I was talking about the implication of this fight for regional politics, for regional stability. ECOWAS is looking at us. African Union is looking at us. It shouldn't be so. It should not be so.
Mining has been identified to have a strong link with banditry.
Sure.
Now, do you think that if the government, comes back into mining, takes control of it and regulates that particular sector, that we would have dealt with the very, should I say, the source of the funding or
the attraction?
Exactly, for banditry?
Well, for banditry, I'm not sure whether their only source is what they get from mining. They also have other sources. Kidnapping, for example, pays,
ransom.
huge amounts. Robbery, they do robbery too. So they have, cattle rustling. So they have various, means of getting money. So you never can tell. They might also have some kind of international funding, just like Boko Haram. And I don't want to. I think that there's also a connection between the activities of bandits and Boko Haram. It's possible. It's possible they might just have another nomenclature, but it's possible with the level of sophistication that we've seen in recent times. One must begin to interrogate that. It's possible.
You talked about the international dimension.
Yeah.
The financing of the banditry. What do you imply?
Well, when you look at some of the weapons that these people parade, those weapons are not developed in Nigeria. Those weapons are not built in Nigeria. Those weapons come from somewhere. They come from foreign countries. And that's why we have always advocated that the fight against terrorism, the fight against insurgency, is not for whichever country is affected alone. there's a need for a multilateral approach to addressing it. You know, their funding comes from somewhere, their weapons come from somewhere, even the capacities and skills that they deploy comes from somewhere. Some of these guys are trained abroad. I mean, in the North African hemisphere, some even in Europe. I mean, these are some of the things that we need to begin to question. And I'm saddened that, our regional institutions are not taking this thing the way they should. I was at the African Union sometimes last year, December, with other young peace builders from Africa, and we're discussing some of these issues with the Peace and Security Department of the African Union. We mentioned the crisis in Nigeria, we mentioned the crisis in Cameroon, in Burkina Faso, and other places. What did they have to say? We were shocked when the Peace and Security officers told us, the Peace and Security Department officers told us that the crisis in Cameroon, the crisis in Nigeria has not gotten to the stage where they have to intervene. And the question was, at what stage would the African Union intervene? Do you know the number of persons who are being killed on a daily basis in Nigeria? For example, Boko Haram has, consumed more than 50,000 people. The same thing in Cameroon. And the African Union is folding its arms. ECOWAS, the same thing.
Is it possible that they're not getting the right information and data from us?
They are humans. They read newspapers. They are on social media. They are on internet. They read. But there's something they believe in. They call it African solidarity. You know, non-interference. But where's the responsibility to protect? There's a principle, responsibility to protect principle. When a particular government is failing to protect lives and property of its particular citizens, regional institutions have that mandate to come in.
There's quite a lot to talk about on this, but then our time has run out, so we have to wrap it up here. Thank you very much, Mr. Rafiu Lawal, for talking to us on this topic.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming.
Interesting.
All right.
Okay, he's a security scholar, and we'll be looking at heightened insecurity